What's the first thing we do when we wake up in the morning? Now think for yourselves for a second. Just think all the way back to when you woke up this morning. What was the first thing that you did? I'm going to give an answer that kind of fits all of us, right? We got out of bed. So we woke up and then we got out of bed. Kind of fits, doesn't it? Well, put simply, this is actually incorrect. There's a process that happens between us waking up and us getting up, for example, and that process is us telling ourselves we're going to get up. Now, bear with me for a second. I know it sounds crazy and weird, but other than a few things our brain does for us, like keeps us breathing when we're asleep, everything else we do is done by us telling ourselves to do it. Now, why am I giving you this totally random example? Well, I believe this example shows just how powerful words are. What do I know about words? My name is Solli Raphael. I'm 14 years old, and I love words. I woke up one day when I was 7, and I decided I was just going to put pen to paper. I started writing down my thoughts and what I did each day, and after days, weeks, and months, I compiled a short story, which was basically just compiling all those days of journaling. And I loved it. This is something I absolutely loved. So I decided to write more short stories, this time fictional. And I loved creating this whole outline of a story, and this is kind of where my love for words really began. After that, about a year later, when I was 8, I got into reading heaps of comics. I loved comics. So I decided to write a comic book series of my own. And this is where my connection with writing grew even more. I loved even illustrating characters, giving them names, giving them stories, and linking that all together. About a year later from that, when I was 9, I was in class, and my teacher said we're going to learn how to write a haiku. I never heard of a haiku before, but I was informed that this is a form of writing and a style of poetry. And I love writing. So I went, okay, I'll give this a go. And I absolutely loved it. I just was in awe of how you could put words together and poetically create a story. And so this is where my passion for poetry began. Moving forward a couple of years now, I was 11, and I don't know what came over me, but I was like, I want to become an author, which was about time, considering I just spent the past 4 years of my life writing in every spare moment. But I was like, all right, I want to become an author. I looked through my haikus, my comics, my short stories. I kind of thought to myself, I'm not sure what publishing work should look like, but I know everything I've done isn't it. So I set out with the goal to write, I guess, what you could call a proper book, or a book I'd be happy to have published. So I went along with that goal. About a year later, I was in year 7, the start of high school, and I got into listening to a lot of rap and hip-hop. And I was on YouTube watching a rap battle, and you know how on YouTube you've got the suggested section or what videos are coming up next? Well, I was watching the rap battle, and in that, one of those videos, it was a slam poetry video. I never heard of slam poetry before. All I could think of was the slamming I'd just seen in the rap battles, and then the poetry, the haikus I used to love to write. And it was exactly that, rap and poetry combined. And coincidentally, that same week, I was in my local library, and a brochure caught the corner of my eye, and that brochure read, Australian Poetry Slam Local Heats at a date that was 3 weeks from that moment. Let me tell you, going forward from those 3 weeks, I've never learnt so much in my entire life. I was researching, I had no idea there was so much about poetry, the history of poetry, slam poetry, the history of slam poetry. I had no idea. So after that, I decided to write a poetry book. And I wanted this to be a collection of my poetry, but also getting all that information I had learnt and my experience and putting that in a couple of chapters for kids and teens like you guys to learn how to write poetry and perform it and even love it just like I do. Because I kind of thought, well, I want to become an author. That was what I was thinking along the side. And so I was like, if I can write more books, that's a more chance, right? I can become an author. So I went along starting to write my poetry book. I managed in that 3-week period to write a poem and memorize it. I had about 2.5 weeks. I just finished writing it. I just had enough time. So I entered the local heats. I ended up winning the local heats. I moved to the New South Wales state finals. I won that, and I moved to the national finals at the Sydney Opera House. And at the age of 12, in an all-adult competition, I won. I won the national finals. And the video of me performing my winning piece was viewed over 4 million times in the first 24 hours. So I instantly gained this platform for writing and sharing my work, my poetry. And so I was writing my book, and moving forward now 6 months, so 6 months after I won the Poetry Slam, Penguin Random House publishers got in contact with me, asking if I had any work or content to publish a book. And that was the time when I had just about finished my first poetry book, Limelight, which was what I was wanting to do 7 months back before I had even entered the Poetry Slam. So with a bit more magic in between, Limelight was published when I was 13 in September last year. And here I have a copy. And Limelight has now been published in 5 countries around the world. And I guess in this past 2.5 years, that's how long it's been now since I've won the Poetry Slam. I'm now 14. And I've been so privileged to perform and speak at many different events and with students, awesome students like you guys, to chat about your amazing ideas. So I'm actually going to now perform one of my slam poems. It's called The Power of Connection, and I hope you enjoy. Connection. People seem to think that word brings a lot of complexion. In a way, it brings its questions. Those who spend their days hiking through woods and watching waves curl think they're the most connected. Yet those who are texting people from around the world believe there's no stronger form of connection. What if it's those who travel faster than the winds can hurl, going for every opportunity? Or those who study psychology so much that they can read people's perceptions? Or those working in their community, helping those to bring together unity, that feel they live a life more lively than the combined lives of you and me? Maybe it's those that when a random homeless person talks to them, they stop and pay attention. The power of connection. Yeah, maybe this is connection. Yet through every answer, there seems to be 2 more questions. But if for a second reflected on the direction that we're heading, I reckon it could strengthen a much larger connection because we're all connected. You don't need any tests or any war consequences to find that the answer is what was expected. Though through this population of billions, it doesn't take long to work out that each individual has an individual opinion. You all have different visions. You all have different positions and many missions. But you all have one massive thing in common, and that is that you bring together the hearts of millions. The act of connecting can only become stronger. Think about everyone you know. Soon you'll start to wonder how many more people in your life you can discover. That number proves society's progression. Right now, there may be a lot of introspection, but maybe the solidarity that we create is our true connection. The power of connection. Yeah, maybe this is connection. Yet through every answer, there seems to be 2 more questions. But if for a second reflected on the direction that we're heading, I reckon it could strengthen a much larger connection because we're all connected. It's scientifically tested. If for a moment we all stopped, we'd realize actually nothing in this world is separate. Think about it for a second. Sometimes we may feel that we're not joined or together, but we're never disconnected. Floating objects aren't floating because atoms still connected. And it goes on and on. Every link is all adjoined, it's almost hard to comprehend it. Maybe this is connection. The power of connection. Yeah, maybe this is connection. Yet through every answer, there seems to be 2 more questions. But if for a second reflected on the direction that we're heading, I reckon it could strengthen a much larger connection because maybe this is connection. Thank you, guys. Thank you. So back to what I was saying right at the beginning of this talk about the power of words. If there's one thing this journey since I was 7 of me writing and performing, what it's taught me, and it's still teaching me today, is that the words I choose to use and speak have a power way beyond I had ever realized. And there's a phrase or a quote that actions speak stronger than words. And I think this is a little bit twisted because the actions that are stronger than words, well, the words are what that person told themselves to then take that action that could have revolutionized the world. So I believe if we twist it around a bit, the words we choose not only to speak to others, but to ourselves as well in those subconscious moments, like when we're getting out of bed, I believe those words have the power to change the world. So I'd now like to finish with one last slam poem. It's called Let's Make More Minutes Count. And with my journey, I've been able to continually grow my platform of using my words. And last year I was able to collaborate with Greenpeace, and this is the poem I used for that, to create a campaign about climate change, but looking at it in a positive light and what we can actually do as an individual and as a society to make a real difference. So I guess going out with this, I believe that our words can have the power to do two things. And that's one, encourage the people around us, and two, encourage change. Because I've seen that my words have not only the power, but the influence to shape the future and in overall to shape our future. So I hope you enjoy this last poem. Why is it that in Australia, 1,902 coffee cups are thrown out every minute? Why is it that in Australia, 600 kilos of clothing is thrown into landfill every minute? Why is it that Australian households create 1 tonne of plastic waste every minute? Why is it that this year alone, Australia has produced nearly 1.4 tonnes of e-waste, including phones, laptops, computers, toasters and tablets every minute? Why is it that Australian supermarkets throw out approximately 1/3 of a tonne of food every minute? Why is it that globally we dump 4,100 tonnes of waste every single minute? It's all because of money, isn't it? You see, big business and the government discovered it, and they're still loving it. You can't tell they're happy about it because they tried to smother it, cutting it, or they uncovered it and stuck it in the money pits, but if they actually looked up from their money-covered desks and took a look at the Great Barrier Reef, Great Australian Bight, clean soil, trees, beaches, seas and wildlife, they would realise that there's almost nothing left. So since the government aren't with us, let's force them to make a change. Let's petition to transition into reducing our emissions. On a mission to protect our forests. For arrest? No way. Not until the day we stop the Adani coal mine. Yeah, the government really crossed the line, but there's still time for polluting our oceans to be banned. So I would keep going with that fight. Let's demand our supermarkets to get rid of this horrible plastic packaging on our food. Let's protest. It would test our skills, but there's still plenty of hope for saving our planet. So let's plan it. Let's plan a date on when our younger generations are going to know that they'll be able to see sea life in our oceans. Poetry in motion? I guess you could call it that. Just as long as we end this natural habitat erosion. Yes, you've been chosen to take back this filthy, greedy potion on our earth. Because money is nothing to what our home is really worth. And that's a fact. And yes, lots of us positively react to the impact of climate change, but it's how the majority of us act behind our backs that leaves us 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But if we work together, we can stop them in their tracks. So are you with me? Are you with me on rewriting our laws? Are you with me on protecting our shores and ocean floors? Are you with me on saying no more to plastic bags, cups and straws? Because if we do that, maybe we could turn these climate change problems around. Let's stand together, stand for better, and use this people power to make the minutes count. My name is Solli Raphael. Thank you so much. Thank you.